So the real reasons why I came to study in China are two. First one, I always wanted to do business internationally. And for me, understanding China and being in China was one of the most profound changes I could make in my career. So I always thought I would make it to China eventually. But then when I encountered the Schwarzman Scholars Program at Tsinghua University, that really allowed me the opportunity to come and do a master's degree at the top university in China, and then get to know a bunch of different leaders from around the world. And that added a lot of value to my experience in China.
I always wanted to do my MBA, so when I started to compare the different schools around the world, I realized that all the Western schools are very familiar to me. If I go to China to do my MBA, it will be just very different experience, and it will add much more value to myself as a personality and as a professional.
I was always fascinated by East Asia and China in particular, even when I was a kid. And then as a business lawyer turned entrepreneur, I was always following China's rise, economic development. I was always fascinated by it. And that was what originally drew me to come here to try to be a part of it and help Latin American companies establish links with China and vice versa. Now as an entrepreneur and as a business person.
I always believe that the best way to experience the culture and to understand this culture is to immerse yourself and to be part of it.
So I spent 2 years studying in CEIBS, which is China-Europe International Business School, and I did my full-time MBA program there. So before I joined the program, I was thinking that Chinese people are not so open. I thought it would be very difficult to find common language with them.
Three of the misperceptions that I have on China is the first, it was copying the technology and stealing technology from the US or other places in the world to copy it in China. The second is that it was very polluted, that in places like Beijing, you couldn't see the sun in a given day. And lastly, that it was very poor or very underdeveloped, and the people were paid very little to produce all the clothes and all the stuff that we see everywhere in the world.
I knew China, before coming, I knew China was a complex market, but only until I came here, I realized the degree to its complexity. And when you think about it, it makes sense. It's the largest consumer market in the world, and of course, it couldn't be the easiest. It's actually the hardest. Another one was that you really need to localize whatever you're trying to do here. Not only yourself as a person, you need to actually develop and learn the language, learn the culture, the customs, but also if you plan on doing business, you really need to try to understand what the consumers are looking for. But at the same time, never be afraid to innovate. I always like to think at, on one side at McDonald's, for example, how they, even though they're so successful, they always localize their products to China. But on the other hand, Starbucks, everybody thought bringing coffee to China would be a bad idea because they've been drinking tea for a millennia, but actually they've been a huge success.
A perception in the West that that is common is that China is very internally focused country. At the same time, I think a lot of my friends abroad mentioned that they might think Chinese people are shy or a little bit introverted or closed.
Well, I've been here in China for 4 years now, and actually the more I learn about it, the better I speak the language, the more rich I think it actually is. So my conception about how complex it is, it's reaffirmed, but actually that's what keeps motivating me to learn more and more.
I found people who have very similar values to mine, and I was able to build very meaningful and close relationship with these people.
Now, the misperceptions have totally changed. First one, you realize that here they're not stealing technology, they're actually creating their own technology and making it much better. That's one of the reasons why after my program at Tsinghua University, I decided to work at ByteDance, which is the company, the parent company for applications like TikTok. So it's one of the most valued startups in the world at 75 billion. And for me, that was key to understand the internet space and the technology that was going on in China. Second, the pollution. I live in Beijing. I've been living in Beijing for the last 2 years, and there are sunny, beautiful days like today. So that's just not true. Here you also have good weather as well as some polluted days, but that's okay. It's from time to time. And lastly, when it comes to China being underdeveloped, we see that there is a lot of wealth, that there is a lot of capital, and if you have good ideas here, you can actually make your companies and your ideas make it to a reality and be successful in China and internationally.
The main one is how permeable this culture in this country is for taking and absorbing influences from outside and making the best out of it. There are only a few cultures that are as curious and as thirsty for seeing the outside, the different knowledge as Chinese people, Chinese students, Chinese organizations, and Chinese institutions. If you're a foreigner in China, you are really, really lucky because you get treated always with the positive assumption. And that's a very unique thing that I think only very a few countries can offer.
One of the aspects that has struck me the most about China's development is technology and the infrastructure. First, when you come to China and you go to new cities like Shenzhen and you see all the skyscrapers and how beautiful it is, and you know that it's only made in the last 40 years, that's when you start wondering, how is it possible here in China to have such a development where in the rest of the world that's unheard of? And the second development is technology. Here you have the newest Silicon Valley here in Beijing, in Zhongguancun, but as well in Shenzhen. And you realize that there are many hot startups created in China, also rivaling now the US.
I had been in China before, a few years before I came, and even just in the span of a few years, the development has been amazing. And also in the interior of the country. The first time I actually came here, I went to Jilin in the northeast, and I was expecting to see a different situation in terms of development, but I was stricken by the highways, the infrastructure, the railroads. It was just the same all around the country.
I think the most common thing would be to say the speed of developments in China. Of course, with that, we often say, oh, things happen so fast in China. When I just arrived in 2017, people were telling me about a bunch of students who did a shared bike on campus of Beidai University, and half a year later, OFO was occupying all streets of Beijing. So definitely I got to experience the speed on my own skin in that sense, which goes together with the scale of developments. But I think in China, the perception of time in that sense is different, that yes, we have a goal to get something done, but if it's not done by that time and we still want to get it done, we will continue pursuing this and we'll figure out ways. And I think that keeps surprising people that haven't been here.
You can visit many other very interesting and beautiful places just being on a train for a couple of hours. So every aspect of the infrastructural development, such as roads, such as railway stations, airports, this really what is impressive in China.
I feel that sometimes we foreigners are being welcomed and are getting offered a lot of opportunities, but sometimes it's too easy, as in we're welcomed a little bit too much maybe, and it's okay to give us a little bit more hard time and to tell us, you know what, if you're in China, you better learn our ways too a little bit more.
I have always admired China's attitude toward its rapid development. It's a development nowhere seen before in the history of mankind, but they've actually always had an attitude of what they call the peaceful rise of China. And I think now that China is becoming more and more powerful, richer and richer, it will become a challenge to stay the course and maintain this humble attitude toward international relations. And I hope to see China maintaining the course.
China is completely misunderstood anywhere around the world. And if I could change something about China, is that perception that people in different places have on China. China is not evil. And if anything, we need to work with China to ensure a peaceful and a promising future for everybody in the world. So one of the things that I could change is to really tell people the real story about China. And that's where I became, let's say, some kind of ambassador and explain why I'm here, why my perceptions, my ideas about China have changed so much, and why I'm deciding to stay in China for the next 5 to 10 years.